I actually have additional reasons to be really happy apart from just the show, which will obviously be really, really good. But my Jacksonville Jaguars actually pulled off a big upset last night. We beat the Kansas City Chiefs, so it was us against the
Um,
Chiefs and the refs. So it was a good one.
Gotcha. I was seeing some talk in one of my group chats, but I don't follow sports, so I had no idea what they were talking about. But I
Yeah,
think
yeah. So
that's what it was.
that's probably what it was. Yeah. So the Jags, who are notorious for losing in crazy ways, that almost happened again last night, but we managed to pull through and get a dub. So go Jags! In honor of that, I wore my Jaguars jersey for this episode. But I'll let you kick off with the news, man. Take it over.
I feel like you're always in your Jags uniform, man.
I wear them often, but for this one, a jersey, I had to actually pull out the big stuff.
Fair enough. Yeah, man. So for the news, first thing that's definitely been on everyone's mind is that Bitcoin hit a new all-time high over the weekend. And as we speak, it actually is sliding back down from that all-time high.
But it was fun while it lasted. But I think this is how people get distracted, is that it doesn't maintain a lot of big price movement, so people lose track of the percentage movements, and I think that makes people leave too much money sidelined, and then they have to pay the cost later. So yeah, it seems like that happens almost every time we hit a new all time high.
Yeah, right. It's actually wild. I feel like the market dynamics have honestly, I'm just gonna be honest. I think things have changed ever since we've got these ETFs out and stuff like that. Like the markets are moving a little bit more hmm, there's a lot more manipulation in that market. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah,
We got
most
some people
definitely.
in the chat.
Do it. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
What is up, people?
We got
Tell it.
PLVJ saying, "Can't wait for today's episode. This is my bread and butter,
Let's
especially
go.
because Keith decided to start posting less."
Don't worry, he's getting back to it. He's getting
Yeah,
he's got a bunch of videos filmed.
you got me. You got me. Trust me. I'm like trying to build some stuff up. So it's coming. It's coming. What's up, crypto family from J Land TV? What's up? Happy to
What
have you
up?
here
How
with
you
us
doing?
today.
How you doing? And so then you also had another news story here. The
Yeah.
US created a CEO position for the IRS.
Yeah, I thought this was hilarious. Scott Bessent yesterday kind of announced that they have a new position at the IRS called the Chief Executive Officer, and I just thought that that was super fun.
That is
Um,
awesome.
and essentially, also, so Scott Bessent is currently an IRS commissioner at the moment, and he is apparently keeping that role as the CEO comes in. So it's like a whole separate thing that they're building out. And what better than have a CEO of the IRS so that they can collect more money?
100%. Yeah, it's all these institutions, man. It's crazy that how they function and the things they say publicly, but then how the structures are actually built. It's the more that you learn, the more you get frustrated, which is what I've consistently found.
Absolutely, man. And we got RD in the chat saying howdy, a good afternoon to you wherever you are. Uh, yep. And then the other thing that I wanted to tap in on is in the US, we do have this government shutdown going on. I believe this is day 7. So it's almost one full week of having the shutdown. With this, there's a lot of things that are starting to slow down. And regarding the economic data, that has not come out yet. So we were looking for the jobs report data on Friday, and that hasn't come out yet, as far as I am aware.
Yeah, I think you're right, and that's a big deal because that will have a big impact on additional rate cuts throughout the rest of the year. So, a lot of the times, like the betting markets are already predicting there will be multiple more rate cuts in the coming year, but that's all going to be dictated based on what these numbers are going to be showing, and so not having that information leaves us a little more in the dark there.
Yeah, and with that, we are expecting more rate cuts, but now it's like shooting in the dark. Jerome Powell and the rest of the Fed, they don't know exactly what's going on just yet, and there's other economic data that will be coming out because not all of the economic data that we get is coming from the government, but in this case, the Bureau for Labor Statistics has not been able to put this number out just yet, and that's as far as I am aware.
Cool, cool.
Yep.
Two more news stories that we'll cover before we get into the main meat and potatoes of the episode, which will be a project breakdown of Cardano, explaining the good, the bad, the ugly, what's to come, all that good stuff. And I'm a massive Cardano nerd, so this will be definitely a good one. I've been excited. I've been pushing Keith to do this episode for a while, and so now we're here. But the final two news stories is that ChatGPT launched their own. I don't know exactly what app you would even call it, but they launched, or OpenAI launched Sora 2. And so Sora is an AI video creator that allows you to basically put your face or other people's faces into very well created, near indistinguishable AI created videos that they look so good, it almost looks like real life. And that is now creating a lot of, like, Twitter is where most of the people talk about this stuff, but it's pretty insane to see the videos that are getting created. And my mind obviously goes to a recurring theme in the show where it's like, hey, if this is what we're seeing and I have access to this in my pocket, like, what does the government have in terms of the ability to create videos that are indistinguishable from real life? So we're entering the era where we're going to have some sort of built-in systems to determine what is real versus what is fake. Blockchain is going to play a very big role in that. I think that's only going to be increasingly more important. Have you seen this app at all, Keith?
I've been seeing the output. People are going crazy posting it. I saw it mostly on Instagram, actually.
Okay. Well,
There's
I have an
so much
invite.
to talk about there.
Yeah, so I have an invite code, so I'll actually send you one right now because
Okay, cool.
it's invite only right now. So I'll send you one.
Ooh,
So
got get the inside scoop.
I'll let you in here. And so this is pretty insane because I've talked about this before across other places in the internet, but there was in current moment in time, like UGC creators or creators of any kind have a lot of leverage right now. And we're like, me as a marketer or as a business owner, I'm forced to deal with these creators that they're now like they have an embarrassment of riches in terms of people reaching out to them trying to get their attention, but it's only out of necessity, right? When it gets to a place where I can create an avatar and I can create the videos that I know will work better because I'm a marketer by trade, there just becomes less and less leverage from these creators. Like, it's going to continue to go down and down and down and down. And so I do think that there will be creativity that spurs from this, where there'll probably be new social platforms that enter the chat. Hey, Keith,
Mm,
maybe you and I should create a new
mm.
social media platform. Maybe that's our big swing. But I do think that this is going to force a lot of change, and a lot of consumption patterns will change dramatically, which also leads to our next last news story here is that ChatGPT is starting to roll out ads. So much like Google, their whole back of their business was built off of their Google Ads product. ChatGPT is incorporating ads within their results either now or in the near future, which was an inevitable reality. Of course, that was going to happen, but the intent on that kind of traffic will be crazy. I'm very curious to see how much these placements cost, because in our last episode or two ago, we talked about how much more expensive high intent marketing is, which is why Google made so much money. So this will be very interesting to see the kind of
Oh
conversion
man.
rates on this. If you own a business, you should be early on this because the prices will always go up. And so if you want some arbitrage on your ad spend, I would get in on Chat GPT ads as soon as humanly possible.
Oh man. Yeah, this is like next level intent, right? Like they're sitting there analyzing your brain all day and through days and weeks and months and years. And it's like, here's the thing.
Yes, it's being served on a silver platter at that point. The conversions are going to be absolutely insane, and it's going to redefine discovery of all sorts. So it'll definitely change marketing quite a bit, which is why we brought it into this, because I think ChatGPT is really going to be the gateway for most new crypto people. Like, I think that's how they're going to
Mm,
get it brought up to speed, is asking questions into this, right? And so if I'm a blockchain creator, or like I'm a Web3 founder, like, I would be all over ChatGPT ads, because if I can be where they came in and start the allegiances, as you know personally, Keith, like, people get really deep into their projects and they almost become like cult like connected. And so if you could build that foundation through something as trusted as a Chat GPT interface, like, I'd be all over that.
yeah, and then the only other thing that I would want to say about that too is, as people have probably been aware, there's this concept of like AI engine optimization or whatever. AI optimization is like the other side of trying to create content that will get picked up by it organically as well. And that industry, right, could totally become a very big, massive thing as well compared to the SEO, search engine optimization, which has been standard for the past, decade and a half.
Great point. Yeah. So right now, a lot of times they're pulling from blog articles, but not necessarily. Like, the difference is the art form here is that you want to understand user behavior to best leverage the communication medium. And so with Google, you understand how people use it. And so you understand the type of things that they would type in. So then people would optimize for what was most frequently being searched. But this is a completely different paradigm because it is far more personalized, and people will confidently get solid feedback regardless of how they type it in. So that adds another layer of skill and nuance to create content that will be placed well from these LLMs, based on how people would get to that place of asking that question. So great point. That's going to be a massive emerging market. I've actually seen some venture-backed startups trying to solve that LLM SEO problem in a very big way. So I would definitely also advocate being early on that, because there will be massive businesses built off of getting this right early. And so if you are wanting to do a business, or you know someone who has a business, make sure they prioritize this, because these shifts, the big winners always get this stuff right first, and they win so big by doing this that almost everything else doesn't matter, because people just don't move quickly. So if you can win this, you'll win in a very big way.
Love it, man.
Cool. On to Cardano.
Let's do it.
Okay. So Cardano is a layer 1 and a 3rd generation blockchain. So essentially, it was founded to improve on Bitcoin security and Ethereum scalability and smart contract capability. So we talked about Ethereum last episode, Bitcoin before that. I see Cardano as kind of an evolution of both of those things to amplify what can be done. And it was built from the ground up, thinking very long term. So we've talked about how big the stakes are here in terms of how you decide how to do something is going to impact potentially millions or billions of lives for hundreds of years. So it's a very high stakes game. And so what really separates Cardano from every other option that's out there is how rigorous their process was in making different decisions. So they went the peer-reviewed, research-driven approach that is a lot more rigorous, time-consuming, and definitely a lot less sexy. And I think that has a lot to do with the public perception of the blockchain. Is I do think the fact that it didn't move quickly and it wasn't sexy really impacted how the everyday person sees it. And I think it impacted it, especially on crypto Twitter, a lot, where people just kind of see it as a dead chain. And there are numbers that would depict that, but a lot of these numbers are very manipulated, very skewed. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I love this conversation because it's like people get so caught up in like looking at like the on-chain activity when like what is it that these people are doing on the blockchain, or what has it been built to do? Right? Like that's the real question to ask. It's like even like on-chain revenues and like things like that. Like when people are looking at making investment decisions in these cryptos, that's one of the main things they're looking at is like, what's the on-chain revenue? I'm talking about like the smart people. Like this is what the really smart people are doing. And I'm like, I just think that like when we're talking about this asset class, maybe for trading, that makes sense, right? Like if you're looking at more like 1 to 2 year and shorter term timeframes, and yeah, you might want to look at like on-chain revenues um, and on-chain activity and adoption and things like that. But it's like when you're looking at the long term, like we're just so early. So it's much more important to look at like what is the vision in my eyes, what's the vision of what these people are building out and what is the actual purpose of the solution that they're building out. So that's just one thing I wanted to add in about that.
Totally, dude. That's actually the exact same thought process that I went through when I decided to make a Cardano my highest conviction bet, was because I was trying to think about this, and I don't every time that I've tried to do short-term trading, I always end up getting burned. Even when I win, I ended up losing. So I've just kind of shifted my investing approach to taking high leverage swings over a longer time horizon. And so 4 or 5 years ago, I did what we advocate doing. I literally went through the top 50 crypto projects and read the white paper for like all of them. And then through doing that, I was just trying to extrapolate out who will eventually be making the key decisions. And so I thought about, okay, well, who is the highest leverage or who has the most control over big financial decisions and how those things are governed? And when thinking about those stakeholders, Cardano just seemed like kind of a very viable approach for the major ways that money changes hands. And I thought that a lot of the things that they really harped on would really attract the people who could give them what they need, because most of the people who are in positions of power, they're really more in the position of reputation preservation, right? Like they want to alleviate risk as much as humanly possible. And so if they're taking the peer-reviewed, slow, brick by brick approach that Cardano has taken, I think these people are going to look at this and be like, okay, this is clearly one of the lowest risk bets for me. This has never gone down. It's been up since its inception, and it's been built off of this very long-term horizon. And as we'll talk about more, they are thinking very holistically and trying to solve a lot of the problems that people have. And I will also say that they're not delusional to their own limitations that they've created for themselves from taking this approach. But just like you said, this is a long game. Like these prices may move in 4 year cycles to date, but this is the future of money. So like taking the brick by brick approach is different. Go ahead.
Yeah, and like so I was talking to one of my good friends who's worked at YouTube for a little bit, and I was talking to him about how like YouTube like jumped on shorts all of a sudden. I was like, well, that's kind of funny. Like, where did they get that idea from? It kind of feels like, TikTok did this, Instagram tried to do it, and then YouTube tried to do it. And I asked him, he was like, we didn't want to be first. We wanted to like see all of the issues that they were going to
Yes,
have and then build and have that product be out there and take it over immediately.
Keith, you're so
So
smart, dude. You're
that's
so
kind of like
smart.
how I look at it.
Yes, that's so, you're so smart. So that's actually exactly kind of what Charles Hoskinson's thesis was he's like the people who are out there right now, they're MySpace, we're going to be Facebook, right? For the exact thing that you just said is we're going to see where they go wrong. And ironically, a lot of people like Ethereum is the biggest layer one, but if you look at their new roadmap and like their new plan, it's basically Cardano. And Charles makes that joke all the time, right? Where he's like, "Oh, they're announcing all these new innovative ways to improve the system," and he's like, "That's what we started with." Right. And so we can go further into it. Did you have anything else to add before we move on?
Nah, man, let's keep going down this Cardano rabbit hole.
Cool. So it's very scientifically built with the inclusion of like blockchain specialists from rigorous, like very prestigious academic institutions. Everything was built very methodically, a lot of time spent, a lot of peer review, which if anyone who's been come from an academic setting, like that stuff takes a lot of time, effort, and money to do because there's just it's a very painful process to get anything peer reviewed. So them doing that naturally slowed things down quite a bit. So here we have the go ahead, Keith.
So I think the major thing that is worth talking about around like what these people were researching and trying to figure out was the best possible consensus mechanism.
Hmm.
And so for people who are a little bit newer to blockchain, the whole point of a consensus mechanism is trying to design a way to keep a ledger, right? That is a universal kind of like state of the ledger, or like um basically like you've got all these different participants all over the world that are trying to transact over this network, but we want to have a centralized place where that record of the order of these transactions is being held without having some other intermediary in that process, like a bank, right, who
Mm,
is there to keep the ledger for you on your behalf. So this whole problem that's being solved with blockchain in general, the reason blockchains exist is to be able to create a ledger that no one has control over and that has accurate information through time of the order of transactions. And so the consensus mechanism is like, what is the actual mechanism through which we come to agreement upon the order of these transactions through time? And Cardano, what they did was they said, first off, there's two major approaches to consensus in blockchain. One of them is proof of work. That's Bitcoin, right? And this idea is like giving up these external resources like computation or electricity in that regard to provide security to the network that then helps to say uh, what happened in what order is based upon what you're giving up to the network in the form of exogenous resources. But with the other major approach is proof of stake. And so proof of stake is this concept of instead, and Cardano's nuanced here, I learned this morning, that idea that instead of having to use an external resource to provide validation to the network or to prove that you're not going to lie about something, you're actually going to use what's called, you're going to have a stake. So let's say in Ethereum, for an example, however much Ethereum I have, I'm going to put that up as a stake. And that stake, I'm putting my stake in the ground and saying that if I lie about something, then you are allowed to come and take my stake away. You're allowed to take my Ethereum away. Um, so it's two major different approaches. One of them is, hey, I'm going to put electricity into this. So if I lie, then I won't get rewarded. And that's a real loss because it's real world resources. Whereas with Ethereum or proof of stake, generally the idea is that I'm going to just stake whatever financial resources that I have inside this network. So that's kind of I'll round it off by saying like Cardano went super hard on trying to figure out proof of stake and doing it in a way that is as fair as possible and that is as secure as possible. And I just did my digging this morning, like fully into this. Like they've really, really well thought out how it could work. And there's a lot of different nuances of what issues typically arise with proof of stake, but I kind of wanted to use that as the primer.
that's really important foundational knowledge, and that's also leads into why the naysayers of Bitcoin talk about how their system to maintain the network is very energy expensive. Like it burns up a lot of energy, whereas this approach is a lot more energy efficient as well, which is another huge advantage for the kind of use cases that Cardano is attempting to build to solve. And that's, again, like if once you understand the complexity of the problem, Cardano becomes a lot more attractive to you because you're like, oh yeah, well no shit, they should go slow and build it brick by brick and think through every possible problem and have the biggest nerds on the planet like challenging this thing, right? Like that's exactly how it should be done, and they've done a lot of those things. So really, really important to explain that because that's kind of the core foundation of Cardano. And Ethereum didn't used to be proof of stake, correct?
Correct. And so let's talk about that really quickly because funny enough, we talked about in last episode how Vitalik Buterin and Charles Hoskinson were both a part of the original Ethereum Foundation,
Mhm.
and they clearly had some sort of major philosophical differences and then parted ways. And now, what's
Yeah.
funny about that is that what did Charles say? He said, "I'm going to go after proof of stake." Meanwhile, at that time, Vitalik Buterin was still working on proof of work, and in 2021, what did they switch to?
Proof
Proof
of
of
stake.
stake.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
yeah.
and much to Charles' delight to a degree, because he's definitely someone who's really, really smart, and he's right more often than he's wrong, but he also knows that he's right more often than he's wrong. So it's created a lot of situations where, and I get where he's coming from, because when you know something and a lot of people don't know it because they don't know enough about enough, it's one of the most frustrating experiences that you could ever have, because you're like, I could explain this to you, but I'd have to explain 1,000 things for this to make sense. And
Mm,
so Charles has that in so many realms of life. Like if you go and look into the things that he's working in and he's had crazy amounts of success in, he can see things from angles that only a tiny fraction of people can possibly see from. And so the problem is that he is in a public forum, and he posts on Twitter a lot, he posts and he live streams a lot. So people who are like way less privy to information and also just way less intelligent provide their opinions. And oftentimes they're wrong. And so that's created a lot of backlash because, for better or for worse, Charles would entertain these people. So he would
mm.
always interact with them. And so there was a ton of beef in the community. And so for anybody who has ever spent any time in Cardano Twitter, like it's crazy. It's like I can't. The closest thing I could think of is it's like elementary school, like the drama that exists there. Like there's such dumb fights over dumb, like the dumbest shit ever. But there's so much opportunity here if they can get stuff right. So where should we go next with explaining this whole stuff before I go into specifics on projects and stuff?
Oh man, it's like I feel like there's an opportunity to keep talking about the culture of it because
Okay.
like the thing about Charles too is like he's like this listen, he's this like cult like kind of leader. And it's not even like the people are like I think because Cardano is just such a big community, it's actually really large when you look at it
Yes.
versus some other communities. And I think a big part of it is just Charles, like honestly.
It's large, but it's small. What I mean by that is that everyone knows everyone. It's kind of like, because there are a lot of people involved, but the vocal people aren't that many. And so I would
Mm,
say that that's what I mean by it's large, by it's small. It's like, yes, the numbers are large, but most of the people are silent. And so it's really comes down to the voices of the very few. And naturally, with that, there's different opinions. But there's also so many things built into this that does make your participation in the ecosystem matter more, right? Which I don't know when we want to talk about governance and whatnot. But go ahead.
yeah, and then one of the things that just came into my head around like the communities is like one of the things that could be worth trying to gauge in some sort of a way is like some communities in the crypto space are like very like tech driven communities, right? Where like they're like the community is the developers. Like what ratio of each community is like people that are actually working on it versus people that
Mm,
are just observing? And I think there's an interesting like there's a ratio there for different types of projects, like for Ripple and XRP, like very, very small percentage of that audience and that community is is developing on it. But then if you look at something like Polkadot, maybe, like I bet there's more people that are working on it versus just observing. And I just kind of thought about that because yeah, there's a difference in like what influence certain people actually have in what they're saying about the project and things of
totally.
that nature too.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big thing. And then also with the whole governance structure, like the D reps, I'm gonna butcher like specifics on this, but basically you can create you can become a D-rep, which basically means that you get a lot of people's what they've decided to stake in Cardano, and collectively that person then gets voting power if people sign over their voting power to like a D-rep. Like that's something that happens a lot, where people will basically get a ton of people's voting shares because they don't want to deal with it themselves, so they'll sign it to someone else. And so with that, there's also drama because people can publicly see what they've supported or voted against too. And we'll go down into decentralized governance more in a bit here, but that also creates drama because it's all public facing, right? So you know if someone was in support of something. And one of the biggest one that's currently going through right now is that one of the biggest projects on Cardano, I think it actually might be the largest Cardano native token by market cap, called SNEK, is just did an not approval, a submission to get a loan from the Cardano treasury. So the Cardano network has a treasury where basically you can apply for a grant, or now this is the first ever loan application, where you
Wow.
can pull out ADA and then it basically provide a pitch to the ADA community and say, here's what I would do with X money, and here's how it would impact the community. So I believe SNEK had already applied for a grant before, which almost all of them had been grants. And so it was either like a yes or a no. There was really little gray area before in terms of like how people saw it. Either one person saw it this way or the other way. Whereas this one was a little bit innovative, where they applied for a loan that would be paid back with interest. And so
Mm.
I thought that was absolutely brilliant. We can go deeper into SNEK after we talk about the technology a bit more, but it's just like there's a lot of these forward thinking concepts that I think inevitably, as more and more people see the opportunity that is here, it's going to attract more and more talent, which can lead to better and better things. Is there anything that you want to mention specifically about the underlying infrastructure before we move on to specifics?
I would say on this decentralized governance thing, like to zoom out a little bit for people who might be a little bit newer,
Hmm.
essentially in these blockchain communities and these networks, what people are trying to do is find ways to, all right, back up.
Hmm.
When you create a token, period, usually there are different like sections of what you're going to do with certain amounts of that token. Some of the portion of that is going to be for community rewards. For instance, in the stake, in this, excuse me, in the case of something like being able to do grants, for instance, to get people to build stuff on that project. Another portion is sometimes it's going to be like reserved for the venture capitalists who invested in this project. They'll get a certain percentage of the tokens. And anyways, back to this idea of like the community rewards. Well, sometimes these foundations will, and that's another thing. Usually these are foundations, right? These are nonprofit organizations that are responsible for creating and then managing the distribution of the token. And so, um, anyways, what these foundations will do sometimes is they'll have on-chain ways to distribute the rewards, but sometimes they actually won't. Sometimes it's actually a private thing where just the people who work for the foundation get to make the decision on whether or not a grant is granted to someone to go out and build something for the project. So in the case of Cardano here, it sounds like there's this governance structure in place where, okay, if I hold Cardano, I don't know the specifics for Cardano, but just stick with me here. Maybe one ADA, which is the native token on the blockchain, represents one vote, right? So now anyone who holds ADA at all can submit a proposal for getting a piece of the treasury that's allocated from the token to be for these types of things. And so one ADA meant equal one vote. 100 ADA is 100 votes. And so now I can submit a submission to the protocol on chain,
Hmm.
and everyone can on chain vote on whether or not they want me to get approval for that based upon how much Cardano they hold. Anyways, so I just kind of wanted to like walk through a little bit of like what exactly is happening there.
That is actually a better place to start. That probably can also explain some of the tech through explaining a real world scenario. So let's do that. So SNEK is the biggest meme coin and the largest Cardano native token. A Cardano native token is a tokenized asset that is created on the Cardano blockchain. So if you're new to cryptocurrency, when we said layer one, just think essentially that things can be built upon it. So like Bitcoin is its own thing. You can't build things on top of Bitcoin in the current day structure of things. And actually, a tease for later is Cardano is actually very tightly connected to Bitcoin, which could actually make Cardano very, very successful. But for this whole governance structure, why this is such a big deal is the example that Keith already said was if you put the hand in a very few, you're not going to feel as motivated or empowered to be involved in the community because you don't feel like your say has anything, right? Like look at how many people turn out to vote, right? It's the same people all the time because they feel like the people that don't go feel their vote has no power, and there's kind of some legitimacy to that, right? And so with this, you do have a little bit more of a say in that, and it's adaptive in terms of there's a give and a take in terms of how things get pushed forward, and what this allows for is more aligned incentives amongst the community, right? So like let's use the SNEK example. So they have regionally applied for just a grant. So they wanted money from the treasury, and the purpose of it was they wanted the money to go get listed on all the major exchanges, because a lot of times why you won't find smaller tokens, like let's say from the Cardano ecosystem on these big exchanges, is because when I'm a big exchange, let's say I am crypto.com or whatever, I have to build the infrastructure to hold the underlying asset within my system for all of my users. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of money. It's got to be worth my time and money. There's got to be enough demand for this. And usually, how these tokens get listed is they basically have to pay for it. And it's a lot of money because the technology has to be built. But once you build the technology to host, like, or to have, and these aren't the specific terms, just like I'm trying to grasp the concept for you. Once it's been built where crypto.com can now hold SNEK on there, it's now easier for every other Cardano native token to get listed. So naturally, the first time that you do it, it's going to be the most expensive. It's going to be the hardest one. And so you do need someone to carry the torch for everyone else to then make it a lot easier for them to come along too. SNEK has tried to play that role, but when they applied for a grant, they got rejected because they're like, okay, this really isn't worth our time and money to do this. So then they reapplied for it under a loan, which then changed how people looked at it a lot more. So they still want to achieve the same underlying thing, but they're doing it and structuring it in a loan. Why this is so big? Because if it gets passed, and it's about to get passed in my estimation, is now this is the power of having a system like this, is now everyone is now either directly or like subconsciously motivated for SNEK's success. Because now that they basically put their tax dollars or whatever, however you want to think about it, towards this initiative, they're now far more aligned with the success of that, right? Because now they're like, okay, I voted for this, or even if I didn't, it went through. And so now if I want my ADA to be worth more, I need SNEK to do well. So now so many more people are aligned and working towards this positive outcome, which I think is going to be massive. And the loan was for 5,000 ADA, which doesn't, sorry, 5 million. Very, very different.
I was going to say, like, whoa.
Yeah. No. Very, very wrong. 5 million ADA. And that doesn't sound like that much. You're like, oh, whatever, it's 5 million in business world. That's not like crazy money. But when ADA is going to be like $5 to $25, that's now a lot more money to play with. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, wow. Yeah, this is definitely an interesting, like, look at, tokenomics, right? In like how these different types of distributed systems can build these ecosystems that reward certain types of behavior. This idea that I, as this project on Cardano, would like to get a loan from the entire community, essentially, to go out and then do something that should be rewarding for the entire community is super interesting. And the fact that it's a loan now, right? That changes the whole dynamic. Like, I'm not saying just give me money to help you out. Like, no, I'm saying give me money to help you out and I'm going to pay you back. So actually, this is just an investment opportunity.
Exactly. And most people, especially when it comes to meme coins, which is what SNEK technically is, it is a meme coin, is that there's that connotation of, oh, it can be gone tomorrow. But if you're structuring it in the form of a loan, there's a sense of belief there and accountability where you're actually going to do the things where you think this can actually work out, right? You're not going to, there's a lot more attached to this working out, which I think does change the dynamic completely. So you have the point you want to add?
No, I was just going to say that, yeah, that also now I'm incentivized to also maybe buy the token. Now that's where it gets a little bit funny, but at the end of the
Yes.
day, it's true.
Yes, 110%. That's the point that I was trying to make that you said far more clearly. So thanks for doing that. When you think about that now, that's also why, like, none of this is financial advice. But when I looked into SNEK and I'm like, how could this fail unless Cardano fails, right? And so then I became far more invested in it, literally. And then also, if you look into the ecosystem, because SNEK has done a lot of work here, and there's different ways to get ahead of the game and be investing in this, in the success of this. Where, fuck it, I'll just share it. So I personally think that their NFT project is going to end up being really, really successful. And in my opinion, currently, not financial advice, they could go to zero tomorrow. I think it's dramatically undervalued. And here's my thesis. A lot of people who are in the Cardano ecosystem, they're really only angry because they haven't made money. When there's so much beef and there's so much inner turmoil because none of them are rich. So many of these problems go away when you are rich. Right.
Facts.
So most of these people who got involved, they got involved later where they missed the crazy gains. They weren't there buying ADA at a few cents. They're there buying ADA at $1, and they're still here. And so technically they're kind of down money. And so they believe in the bigger term vision, but they haven't made the money. I think SNEK is going to make a lot of people pretty comfortable. Okay, I think SNEK is going to do quite well. Not financial advice, but if you look at them compared to the other major meme coins, and you look at what happens when things move, it's going to probably do a fair amount of X's. When it does that, there's now a lot of people in the ADA ecosystem that now ADA's become more relevant, and then they've made a decent amount of money. And then I think they're going to want to buy the NFT because now it's the most public brand. Like the SNEK or SNEKies, which is the NFT project, is basically the Pudgy Penguins equivalent for Cardano. It is the most public facing brand, and they're going to look at what these people have done on Ethereum. They're going to be jealous and envious of that, in my opinion. And I think that it'll become a status symbol in the Cardano ecosystem to hold a SNEKies NFT. And with that, there's not that many of them to bring up the price a lot. Like a lot of people, we didn't dive too deep into this in terms of like how this stuff works. But let me share my screen and I'll explain my thesis more directly here. And again, this is not financial advice. Do not
We got Ben shilling meme coins and NFTs this morning, guys.
do not do any of this. I'm just going to tell you why I'm an idiot. Okay. So here is JPEG.store. This is the largest NFT marketplace on Cardano. This gets roasted for how few people use it, which totally is totally fair. But you also have to remember with NFTs is that no one's going to come to this space until they have money. Like these are objectively dumb things to buy, but rich people buy dumb things. We talked about that so many times. And so my whole thesis was I don't need that many people to come into money from this for them to want my SNEKies NFT. Okay. So when I go look at this, come on, load right here. So this is their NFT project. And stick with me here. It's probably all nonsense to anyone, which is totally fair, but I'm going to explain this to you, right? So when you come in to see an NFT project and you see the price, the floor is basically what is the cheapest one that is currently for sale that I could buy in this very moment. Okay, so why NFT projects can move so rapidly and why price manipulation is such a massive part of this, which is like when you learn this thing, you're excited by it. Obviously, when you get burned by it, you're not. But look, right now, the cheapest one I could buy is 182 ADA, which is, in my opinion, very underpriced. Because when this thing goes down and they get approved for the money and they get listed on all these exchanges, they're going to start becoming a lot more relevant and everyone's going to see them as kind of the face of this push for Cardano relevance. And I only need like thousands of people to want to come in, even less than that, to drive up the price. Because when this gets sold, right? So the floor here is now 182. So people would look at this and they'll say the values of one SNEKies NFT is around 182 ADA. But when this gets sold, the lowest price is 185. And so through a practice that's called sweeping the floor, people with large amounts of ADA can come in and basically make this price worth 5, 10 more X in instant. Because most people who have they're being longtime ADA supporters, they've been staking their ADA for a very long time, and they have like hundreds of thousands of ADA that they could deploy at any given moment. And for one person to move the price from 182 to like, let's say even 300, right? Only these ones had to have sold for that price to now be worth that. That's such a small amount of money for these people who have been here for a very long time. I literally only need like a few hundred people to want to participate in this for my stuff to go crazy. So that's why I love NFTs, is that they are super dumb. Like if you don't have money to play with, do not buy them. But if you do have money and you're willing to learn, there's almost no better leveraged bet for an ecosystem, right? So this really is me betting on Cardano working out. And if Cardano ends up working out, this just goes way crazier because it's a higher leveraged bet from that outcome. I'm getting like 5 steps down the line and I'm parking myself there. This could go horribly wrong for me, but if it goes well, it can go crazy well. Does that all make sense, Keith?
Yeah, dude. And I've actually never heard that concept of sweeping the floor, but that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, if you're a whale and you end up seeing this, you're right. It takes one person, right, who sees this and sees the value in it, and then all of a sudden, the floor is
It
gone.
goes mental. And
Yeah.
also, for better or for worse, there's a lot of coordinated price manipulation in this because it's also these weren't deemed securities. So they're able to basically move the price artificially and they're not violating laws. So it's only going to happen more so. So let me show you some examples on this. I'll just show you an equivalent. So this is OpenSea. This is like what I just showed you. It's called JPEG.store, JPG.store. This is the equivalent. This was the first one. These are mostly Ethereum based ones. But basically what all these people do is that they have a ton of money sidelined for when there is good news, and then they sweep the floor. And then the price can jump from like, let's say like 1 Ethereum to like 3 in a matter of a day. Like that stuff will happen and it's coming very soon. And so I don't think anyone should buy NFTs unless they have a lot of money to play with. But if you do have or crypto to play with, this is a great way to do it because it's also a lot of fun, right? And these people who have money, they're going to want to take more bets with their money. That's why NFT mania was what it was.
Very cool. Very cool little lesson here on NFTs and how that whole market works. Love
Yeah,
it.
so that's NFTs marketplace on Cardano is jpeg.store, which also can probably make sense to segue into this, where a lot of people who dunk on Cardano, they just say there's nothing built on it, there's nothing to do on it. Like, why would I want this? It's a dead chain. Keith already alluded to the fact that the numbers can kind of be irrelevant when you're zooming out in terms of what this actually means. But they do have a fair point that last bull market, people were hyping Cardano, and Cardano had basically nothing on it. Like, I don't even think smart contracts were on Cardano last bull market, which basically made it pure speculation. Go ahead, Keith.
No, you're right on, man. That's one of the cool things about seeing Cardano develop is like, once again, back to what I was saying earlier, it's like, yeah, there was no DeFi, no smart contracts, no NFTs, no none of that. But it's like, okay, but there will be. And now, what else, right, does Cardano have to offer on top of that? Because every chain can do it, can do
Totally.
DeFi. What does the underlying blockchain offer outside of DeFi?
Totally. Yes. And now I guess I'll talk about the DeFi thing because that's also a very big deal with Cardano in particular. So for another disclaimer is like, I'm going to get some of these words wrong. I'm more concerned about concepts and what they mean rather than the specific terminology. So feel free to roast me on little words that I get wrong. But Cardano is built in the same underlying technology as Bitcoin. So like Charles sees Cardano as a natural evolution of what Bitcoin was trying to do. The advantage that gives Cardano is Cardano can basically build in a way for Bitcoin users to conduct DeFi activities with their Bitcoin and keep it in Bitcoin, which is such a massive deal because if you know any sort of Bitcoin purist, you know that they have some stipulations. Like they don't want to ever sell their Bitcoin, but they want to keep it in Bitcoin. They want to do all these things. But if you can say to them, you can keep it in Bitcoin and you can make money on your Bitcoin, it's going to be really tough for these people to say no. And so because it's built on the same underlying technology, it allows Cardano to basically become the default layer to Bitcoin, or the default DeFi layer for Bitcoin. And why that's such a big deal is because underneath the hood, it'll be conducted by Cardano. But to the everyday person who's holding their Bitcoin, they'll be able to switch a little button in their wallet to send it to DeFi mode, and Cardano will be the rails underneath that they don't even realize they're using.
Yeah. So obviously, there's a million ways you can go around with that. But this concept of having a way to use Bitcoin and decentralized finance is very, very important, and there's a lot of demand for it. One of the first iterations that we ever saw of anything like this, trying to take Bitcoin and create this sort of layer of decentralized finance, was on Ethereum with this concept of wrapped Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually not super deep in how it all works, but from what I understand, imagine that you're sending Bitcoin to a Bitcoin wallet, but that wallet is actually a place where essentially that Bitcoin is being locked away. And when it's
Yes.
being locked away, it is then kind of minted on the Ethereum blockchain as wrapped Bitcoin. And so, with that wrapped version of Bitcoin that now exists on the Ethereum blockchain, you can now utilize all of what Ethereum has to offer, which is smart contracts and obviously the large developer network and things of that nature. And now you can earn yield on your Bitcoin. But Cardano has done something potentially not only that is competitive to that, but potentially the mechanics of how that actually works is also a little bit different here as well.
Totally. Yes. And so why that's such a big deal is that if you look at these charts, and this is the Coin Market Cap's top 100, everyone roasting Cardano for not having enough usage on the network, if they become the default tool that is being used um, to basically conduct these activities for Bitcoin, that's really, really big deal because look at how much money is here and look who's buying this stuff, right? It's people who don't intend to sell for a very long time. And so if you can get the usage of that where it was previously just sitting idle, that's a massive amount of usage on the network that then makes the whole thing of Cardano worth a lot more. So I'm seeing some comments here. Let me reply to these quick. So
Yes, sir.
I just checked out jpeg.store. Is there more websites offering the same services, or is jpeg.store one of the best, or at least near the top, kind of like how there's a lot of brokers offering the same stocks. Great point. So JPEG.store is a marketplace. So think like eBay kind of deal. Like it's just a place where you can buy them, but it also is a place where you can see who owns what. But anyone could theoretically create a different marketplace that gets used. It's the default biggest one on Cardano currently. So it's basically like OpenSea, but for Cardano. There could be way more created. There could be a different one created. That's just the one that there is right now.
Fantastic. What up, Rob?
What up, Rob? And then Nat is Bitcoin security budget. I don't know what that is.
I'm not sure. Yeah. What is Valdez? What is money Nat? What is that exactly?
Yeah, I'm not sure. But so basically, the core point that I was trying to get to for this episode was if they do crack that and they do actually make it a solid experience and they bring some of this money that's been sitting on the sideline from the Bitcoin ecosystem into Cardano, that is a massive deal for growing Cardano as a token, the ADA token, and then the ecosystem, that why people would want to be there, right? The stakes get so much larger for DeFi on Cardano if it's also where people conduct Bitcoin DeFi. That becomes absolutely massive. And so the biggest player in the DeFi world right now for Cardano is a project called MinSwap. How do I get rid of this? So I'll show my screen now here just to show you this, and then we'll continue on our conversation. Feel free to add in anything here, Keith.
No, Abu says you guys need to check out Caspa. Might have to put that in for one of the next episodes.
Yeah, we'll add that. We can definitely do that in the future. And yeah, also anyone who's here, if you're watching the replay or you're here live, if you're here live, I love you more. But I also love you on the replay. But if you have any questions and any topics that you guys want covered, you just let us know and we'll do it. So this is MinSwap. This is one of the biggest DeFi platforms on Cardano, and so they have their own token, and they basically conduct most of the DeFi stuff within the Cardano ecosystem. And so in turn, if they get this right, they'll probably be a very big deal in terms of the Bitcoin layer as well.
Yeah. And like, okay, so the way that I look at like these DeFi projects is like, okay, so usually a blockchain doesn't immediately have DeFi built on it. They'll usually have some sort of like incentive programs that are put in place to get people to either get grants to go out and build stuff, or people find other reasons to go out and build stuff on top of the blockchain. And then when that happens, usually like there'll be a platform, but that platform may not have a token yet. It might just be something that you can go in and interact with. And usually, by the way, the first application that's usually built on a blockchain for DeFi is called a decentralized exchange.
Yes.
That's usually the first thing. And then with that decentralized exchange, immediately you're going to have this concept of liquidity pools where you can go in and stake your assets on that liquidity pool and start to earn depending upon basically what transactions are happening in those liquidity pools from one token to another. So you'll have these different tokens that exist on the blockchain, and then you'll have this decentralized exchange where you can finally go and like swap one token for another. Because otherwise, like you could have already swapped for those tokens that were being issued on the chain, but there was no interface for it. You had to like know how to code to do it. So that's kind of like what it looks like that project is on Cardano. It's one of those.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, great explanation. That's why it's also very important, is because it allows everything to grow. It has more utility when that takes place. It allows easier interoperability between the different projects that are being built on it. And so that actually, I think, perfectly segues into something else that I can show, which is just the ecosystem at large. So we talked about it already before, that there was nothing built on it last bull run. So people got roasted for that. We also talked about how the community has been known to be very, I don't know about toxic, but like there's definitely been a lot of conflict amongst the people involved. But this is, I'll give you a tour through the ecosystem because I spend a lot of time in here every day. So Tap Tools is basically their coin market cap for just Cardano native tokens. So here you can come in and see all the different projects that get listed on Cardano. So SNEK is the meme coin that I talked about earlier. It's the largest project in this whole ecosystem based on market cap, sitting at a $303 million market cap. And so SNEK also has their own launchpad platform for meme tokens. So you know how there's Pump.Fun? They have their own basically equivalent for Cardano. It's called SNEK.Fun. So if you did want to launch your own meme coin on Cardano, you would do that at SNEK.Fun. So there's a lot of things going on with the SNEK universe, which is why I said what I said. This project's also really, really cool, worth diving into. I actually interviewed their founder, but this is one that I can't believe more people don't understand what this is. So this is basically like decentralized telecom. So think about how you get your phone, your internet, all that stuff. but done so through a decentralized way where basically people can play different roles within this ecosystem, much like we've talked about a bunch of times before in terms of how, like let's say for Bitcoin, the miners are getting incentivized for keeping the whole system going. This is doing a lot of the same practices, but for solving the issue of telecom and communications. So access to networks. This is World Mobile. Let me see if I can go to their
Do they
website.
have like a DPIN kind of aspect to this, as in
Yep,
decentralized physical infrastructure? I think that's what they
exactly.
call it.
Yep,
Okay,
you're
cool.
right. That's the classification of this token. So this is World Mobile Token. I think they're now across multiple chains, but it did start, is my understanding, as a Cardano native token. So here's the World Mobile Token. So if you pay for their service for your cell phone and whatnot, you can get rewarded with their tokens. And then also, if you hold the underlying infrastructure that allows it to happen, like, so let me try to go to their website quickly so I can show you guys, because it's pretty damn cool what they're talking about here and doing. Let me see if I can show.
So it's kind of like a helium kind of thing,
Very,
like a
yeah,
helium alternative. Okay.
totally. They've done some pretty crazy stuff. Like they've gone to places in Africa and like given them one of these devices, and then they've seen the economic impact and how that changed things, and it was quite profound. Like
Wow.
I interviewed their founder, and he was the one who went there and then saw that they came back like a few months later, and the whole economy had grown dramatic amounts because, and he provided real things, right? Whereas, like let's say the fisherman, if he knows confidently that he can coordinate with people to sell, maybe he'll catch more and then he can work less, and then that improves his quality of life, and then he spends more money at the bar, right? Like all of these things that you don't really think about that we take for granted in a system where we constantly have communication. They're bringing communication to the world through these structures that we're talking about. So World Mobile is definitely a big one. IAG is another one that I'll highlight here. uh, they're basically trying to solve, it seems like AWS, we've talked about this a bunch before, where they provide cloud computing. And so if you don't know this and you're not like a big internet nerd like me, most apps that you use, most platforms that you use, they're being powered by some sort of cloud provider. AWS is the biggest one, but as we've also talked about, that's a centralized place. So if they say, "Oh no, we don't want to give you access," then you could lose access to your compute, which in turn means you lose access to your business. IAG is essentially trying to solve decentralized cloud computing. So basically, creating a network that's not in one central place that can then give you the same outcome, providing you the compute that you need to run your business in a decentralized way. So that's a project that's very well known within the Cardano space. And if they solve it, it's a massive problem to solve. Go ahead.
Yeah, and like one thing to add on to this that people sometimes overlook in the blockchain space is that right now, rather, I believe that decentralized cloud is going to be a really big thing in the future, because also when it comes to the blockchain space right now, one of the issues that we have is that a lot of the blockchain nodes that exist actually exist on the cloud. So
Hmm.
when we're talking about like the decentralization of a network, right, you might have independent people that are running these nodes, but those nodes might actually be hosted in the Google Cloud universe.
Yes.
And so, with that being said, it's like actually you've kind of just re-delegated a lot of this, what you thought was decentralization, to a big, large corporation that can shut these nodes off whenever they want. And that's a much bigger deal than what I think a lot of people recognize. So, if we can actually take that same concept, because the economics of putting a blockchain node in the cloud is, if it works for you, then that could be super powerful at scale. But we need to make sure that we maintain some level of decentralization, and something like this, right? These types of projects and solutions address some of those concerns as well.
Totally. It's a massive problem. Is IAG going to solve it? I have no idea. But if they were to solve it, that's a massive potential impact, whether it's them or somebody else. I also interviewed their founder on my personal podcast. So if you want to hear more about that, go ahead and find that. And then everything else in here, go
There
ahead.
is one other one on there that I've completely slipped my mind, but the AGIX token. Now, I haven't been a huge follower of this, but I have owned that token for years.
Really?
What happened over the past year is that they did a merger
Okay.
called the Artificial Superintelligence merger, where there's these people who have been doing some really deep research in the artificial intelligence space over the past, like, since all of this stuff has kind of been around. And when I say that, I mean artificial intelligence in like the 90s. There's like this researcher who started AGI itself, the project that we're talking about here. But what happened is they did a merger between data, I think, or excuse me, Ocean Protocol, FET, and this AGI token all came together. I think it was maybe last year actually that they came together and created this artificial superintelligence allegiance. And now that token merger was like an interesting thing that they did. I didn't like necessarily feel like that was a necessary thing with what AGI was doing on their own. But the people that are behind all of that, it's a very interesting technology and project. I think right now, like it's super early. It's one of those things where you'd have to be like looking way ahead at understanding the tokenomic model of like why this is even going to be a thing. But it is a very interesting project as far as just the people involved and the fact that it's built on top of Cardano and that it's been around like very early for Cardano. And I'm not a huge Cardano person, but I know the people that are in this community that know that project have been really deep into it. And when you know combine blockchain and AI, and everyone's all hyped up. And it's an interesting thing because the tokens themselves were already like these AI token narratives, and FET had already run off last year really big because of that narrative behind it. But anyways, yeah, just another project that's on Cardano that's super interesting.
And that's what they were missing last cycle to really, I think, bring them into the mainstream was stuff to do, things to talk about. They just didn't have it. Whereas now they do have a lot more of that. People are building things like, I'll give some love here. Bodega is a prediction market. So think poly market, but there's an equivalent for Cardano, which is really cool that you can bet on, make predictions on things. Go ahead.
There was also just some news about Polymarket that came out today about, I think it was the Nasdaq, like decided that they're gonna invest in, oh no, the ICE continually made strategic investment in Polymarket. Sorry, but I wanted to
No,
interject that news because that's pretty wild.
go for it. Yeah, no, that's totally fair game. Always do that. So that's another thing to consider. The other thing that people have said negatively about Cardano is that the stable coin adoption there is pretty horrendous. Like there's just not any of the big stable coins on there right now. That's something that they're trying to remedy. And that previously I think happened because there wasn't a lot of communication. But it does kind of seem like the network is and the community is healing and they're coming together. Like for example, Charles was at a conference very recently and he accidentally got thrown into an interview with someone he's had public beef with, who was like a big YouTuber. And yeah, it was awesome. And they patched it up right in real time. It was so funny because at first they're like, and then they both said, "Oh yeah," when I saw it on the calendar, because both people who didn't know about the beef booked it for each other, and so they were like, "Oh wow," and then they buried it and they think it's all good. And it's also happened from people within the community too. So it does kind of seem like the perfect coming of together of things to hopefully push the community forward.
Wow, that's funny, man.
It was
Yeah, see,
hilarious.
like I feel like there's not that much infighting in most communities, man. Like that's super interesting to me.
There's a lot here, like so much, dude. Like I don't entertain any of it, and I like people wouldn't even know that I am deeply involved in this community in terms of consumption because I don't really talk in it because I've not seen. This is also a massive detriment to them is that I've not seen a pro for being that involved. Right, like I've
Mm,
always seen like it eventually ends up with some sort of conflict, and so for
mhm.
me, I'm like I'd rather just be a passive observer here and make my own decisions accordingly and let you guys fight, you know. And so I will say that the governance that we've talked about here, it only recently reached the point where it's now being used as it was supposed to be. So that's a recent development of things that we'll see. Hopefully, that'll actually provide more peace to the community over time. But that kind of stuff does matter from aligning incentives to get more done together than we can independently. And I think there's now finally enough things on here where I don't even think most of these things will be very long term successes unless they really evolve. But there's enough to keep people around for at least a little bit to try it out. And then if they get more educated on Cardano and what we're trying to solve or what they're trying to solve, then I think that can change things quite a bit.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the comment rather that we received here from Rob. Rob saying, "Did you hear about the UK government confiscation of 60,000 Bitcoin yesterday? I believe this should go back to the original owners and not kept." So I actually haven't heard anything about this,
Yeah, I'd not heard that
but
either.
I'm seeing something from the BBC here. I'm going to quickly share my screen because I think
Go
this
for it.
is very interesting. We have a Chinese woman was convicted in after the world's biggest Bitcoin seizure, apparently. So a Chinese national has been convicted following an international fraud investigation, which resulted in what's believed to be the single largest cryptocurrency seizure in the world. The police said 61,000 Bitcoin worth more than 5 billion in current prices. Uh, okay, and so she pleaded guilty. So I guess that's that. um, so,
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, I just wanted to kind of quickly touch on that because that's wild. I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that to our attention, Rob. Really appreciate it. And I would agree that I think it should go back to the original owners and not kept if that's something that's technically feasible. So thanks for bringing that to our attention. And then the other comment, I don't think we addressed this, was PLVJ said Kind of crazy that I haven't heard about Cardano. Only been in this space for about 6 months, but still sounds pretty intriguing. Yeah, I think it's definitely intriguing. I think there was a lot more positive press like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's kind of died out quite a bit. But I do think you'll start to hear about it a lot more because a lot of the stuff that was the boring stuff, a lot of it is done. And
Mm.
so now they're aware that, and then it's actually kind of a testament to the fact that they were really forward thinking was that they didn't spend a ton on marketing when there was no sexy story to say. And now that they do have some more sexy stories to share, they're now really doubling down on a lot more on marketing. Like I'm sure we'll be able to get Charles on here as we grow this show a bit more because that's the kind of things they're prioritizing that they weren't before, which is a very, very big deal and definitely changes the whole thing. But did you have a different direction that you want to go? Because I have one other thing I wanted to add.
Uh, Not really. I mean, I was just gonna say that, yeah, it's like Cardano has always kind of been a top 20 token, but like no one really talks about it because
Hmm.
yeah, there hasn't been a whole lot of like extra stuff going on. And because it's boring, dude. Like it's
It
all
is.
heavy research. Like that's literally like
Yes.
if you don't care about that, if you don't care about the underlying consensus mechanism of the blockchain, then yeah, you don't care.
Totally. There's no shiny objects, or there weren't any here. Now there are. Like I think SNEK's one of those big ones in a major way, but there wasn't a lot to pull people here. But I think they've solved a lot of that. And another one that they've solved or trying to do in terms of getting people over is the rollout of Midnight. So Midnight is their new privacy chain, and I'm going to butcher the specifics, but basically it's solving the problem of private transactions. And so they actually just recently signed a deal with Google Cloud Compute to partner with Midnight. Midnight's really changed the conversation and how people see Cardano at large because that's a very big problem that exists across all blockchains. And so the Midnight token is a very big deal where they partnered with a lot of established chains. Like if you hold Ethereum, if you hold Cardano, if you hold a bunch of other ones that they've partnered with, as long as you go sign up for it, I think you still can, or it may just only recently be over. People are just getting airdropped Midnight tokens. Like millions of people are going to get airdrop Midnight tokens, which brings a ton of people into the ecosystem. And hopefully enough of these things that we've talked about are enough to get people sold on the vision and mission and getting more involved.
Wow. Yeah, I'm seeing holders of ADA, BTC, Ethereum, Solana, XRP, BNB, AVAX, and BAT are eligible.
Hmm. Yeah.
I hadn't heard anything about this, so thanks,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, of course. If you, a lot of people have not claimed their tokens, and so I'll get more if you guys don't. But I still want you to go claim them so you can get the free money and come into the ecosystem. So if you've held, or you are holding any of those things that he just mentioned, and you were holding it before they did the check-in snapshot date, then you are eligible for free Midnight tokens, and I think they roll out in a few months or so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Super cool.
So free money coming your way. But that's it. That's a big, big deal. That solving that makes things very different. It also changes who we're allowed to talk to, who we're able to speak to, and like partnering with Google. All these things really matter. And as these prices start to move, the stories, like the specifics of the stories matter less than the fact that there are positive stories to share, right? Because the narratives can get shaped in so many different ways, and we're predicting things so far down the future. But when it comes to the retail flooding the space, you want as many good stories as possible. And that's why you're hearing every crypto project, every NFT project now suddenly talking about it a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. PLVJ says, where is the best place I can go to if I want to learn the basics of decentralized finance and the big players aside from your own channels? Take that, Keith.
Dude, I'm just gonna have to start putting out more content. You guys called me out earlier. No, I'm just gonna be honest. It's hard to say to go for this stuff, man. It's really there's a lot of different, just random different creators that you can kind of watch. So I'd have to get back to you on that one, man. I'm not gonna lie.
The tip that I would give is, unfortunately, most of the large crypto channels were just kind of run by the people who were the best marketers. They're not really the best minds in crypto. They just understood the assignment of what gets people to click, and that's why most crypto content is garbage. It's like 10x this, price change that, and it's not really useful at all because they fell into the trap of chasing views. So what I would say is go learn enough about the keywords that would be associated with the topics that you'd want, and go find people with not that many subscribers talking about this stuff. Because if it's really boring, but they've been creating content for a very long time, and some people are watching, chances are that's a pretty good indication that it's high quality.
And like the other thing that I'm gonna say about this is like this is one of those topics where unfortunately or whatever, you have to read about it. I think is gonna be
Yeah.
the actual option. I just went to Chainlink because Chainlink is like the for me like one of the best places to go to think about DeFi because they sit in such a fundamental like place in it, so they don't have a bunch of allegiances or alliances to look at, and you can learn the like the infrastructure of how DeFi works. So I would actually go to Chainlink, and I'm seeing they have an education section, and one of them is called "What is DeFi?" And then they also have a really cool video. It's like 2 minutes long, so it's not gonna like be super intensive. But if you just keep going through Chainlink's website and just reading and seeing whatever videos that they may have to offer as well, you can learn a ton of stuff about DeFi, how it works, and what is needed to make it work and move forward.
Totally. Yeah, and we'll definitely be talking about Chainlink in a future episode too. I think that we should make that its own episode for sure. You've got a lot to share there, so we'll definitely make that one. But for the topic of Cardano, I'll just show you guys Charles, who's their founder. We've talked about him a lot, but we haven't shown you him. So this guy is really the guy who pushed Cardano forward. Like Keith said, a bit of like a cult following there in terms of him. He's the leader of Cardano. He does live streams, so I'll show you some of these. And the amazing thing is how many views these get. Like, as someone who understands social media deeply, I understand that this is a very big deal because look how poorly packaged this is, right? Like some thoughts, and then the title, and then the thumbnail is absolute like horrible, and it's still getting 21,000 views. So like, imagine if this guy was working with my team, like as a YouTube strategist, like this guy would be so much bigger. And I think part of it's because they don't know that they should be doing that, and two, maybe they didn't want those people there yet. But I do think that he'll probably start working, and whether it's on this channel or he starts his own show, people will get to become a lot more aware of Charles. And I actually made this prediction like 6-7 months ago. I think a major catalyst for the Cardano ecosystem at large will be him going on Joe Rogan. I think he'll end up going on that show.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that he will be the best crypto episode that has
Wow.
ever taken place on Bitcoin. And this is actually like, when I was thinking about it, I always think through the lens of like spreading of messages because that's how I've made my entire living. And I just thought down to eventually the conversation that will be had. And most of these people who are on the sidelines, they're going to make their decision based off of a long form conversation like a podcast. And I was like, I remember when I was betting on projects. I'm like, who is the face that I think could have the best conversation with Joe Rogan? I actually asked myself that question. And it was clearly him. Because if you go look at it, like Joe Rogan has the most influential, powerful marketing vehicle from one place in the entire world. People don't understand that. Like no one gets the influence that he has. And this is the kind of guy that he will have on that we'll have a good conversation. Go ahead, Keith.
No, dude, I think you're right on about that. I'm just like literally cycling through all the different like CEOs in my head, and I'm like, yeah, like Brad Garlinghouse, like, nah, it wouldn't be as fun. Vitalik on there, like, nah, it's not gonna work. But Charles Hoskinson, and I was actually talking to my family about this recently because one of my family members watches Charles a lot, and it was like he's just so relatable. Like he's this incredible genius, like unmatched levels of intelligence, but he knows how to just like have a conversation, you know?
He's the smartest person you'll ever get to talk to that doesn't make you feel stupid.
Yeah.
Right. And that's something that really is like honestly so difficult to explain how important that is. If you actually reverse engineer what I'm saying, that is the core underlying reason Joe Rogan is the biggest show on the planet, is because he's just smart enough that he's smarter than most of the people who are listening, but he's just like dumb enough to keep the conversation at a level where everyone can understand. And that's no judgment to Joe. Joe's a brilliant guy, but I mean, like he's having people on there that are very complex subjects, like subject matter experts that are very deep, and he's able to pull out a conversation that everyone can enjoy. And you're good,
dude. All I can think about is Theo Vaughn right now, bro. Now I just like taking that to like the extreme, you know?
Yes, totally. Great point. All right. And so would the conversation be as impactful with Charles and Theo? I think it would still be an entertaining one, but I genuinely think that when he sits down and Joe understands these concepts, he'll be so bullish on what they're trying to do. Because most of the things that Joe complains about are kind of the underlying things that Cardano was always trying to solve, which is also what really attracted me to it as well.
100%, man. Yeah, he's like someone, if you really just want to learn also about like blockchain and systems thinking, right? Like he's going to sit here and have these conversations in the terms of usually like what's actually happening.
Yes.
Right. So you're understanding like why these debates are going on and like having real conversations with individual people almost, you know, about why these things are happening and what's going on in the ecosystem. And I just want to very quickly say that from watching Theo Vaughn, by the way, guys, like I realize how smart he actually is.
Yeah,
when he's having these conversations with these people. Yes. So I just want to make sure that that was clear.
Totally. I know Theo's very smart, and intelligence like him sounding unintelligent is actually a testament to his intelligence because he's
Facts.
doing that deliberately. It's a
Yep.
mechanism for entertainment, and it's part of his whole bit. It's also why, like, totally unrelated, different person, but when people got so enraged by, say, Andrew Tate, I'm like, you guys are so dumb. The fact that, like, this is his whole bit. Like, the people who hated him the most were his biggest, what is called sneezers in marketing, where they were spreading your message for you. It's like, you are an absolute idiot, but that's part of it, right? So Theo, yes, very smart guy. Charles is a freaking genius. His episode with Joe Rogan, when it happens, will be fantastic. He went on one big show. I actually strongly recommend watching this. If you want like a further deep dive into this today, go and watch Charles, his episode with Sean Ryan. So right
Oh, so
here,
cool.
yeah, 5-hour
Whoa, I
episode.
didn't see that. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So I've seen this a few times on my personal. I'm not logged in, but this is I've watched this a few times. Really, really good. And you'll see what I mean when you watch that. You'll see that like this guy is going to be the best voice where he can go on CNBC and he can go on Joe Rogan, and it's equally enjoyable for everyone involved. Like that is such a massive thing. So I think now the fact that he's also turned a leaf and realizing that like this is a new era for Cardano, I think many good things are coming to the ecosystem, and he will be a big driver of that.
Love it, man, and I love Sean Ryan's show too. He's also like, I mean, just to see that has 1 million views, by the way, like that's pretty wild.
His episode with Joe Rogan will go crazy viral because of the clips that will come off of it, because they'll be able to poke pain points, right? And so the most effective content either pushes people towards pleasure or away from pain. And we around the world have a lot of very public, loud pain. And he'll be able to not only talk about it and say, I understand your problem, I have a solution, right? And in theory, will it actually come to being a solution? I have no idea, but he'll actually have some good things to say about that. And then Rob said, would Charles smoke a doobie with Joe? That is ultimately the most important thing we're gonna have to figure out. Cigar, I think he would definitely do. Doobie, I don't know. I've never really heard his opinion on the magic leaf there, so I have no idea. But either way, I think they'd have a very good conversation.
Yeah, but yeah, with that, it's like Charles, that's how you think of him, right? It's like that's the guy you sit down and do that with or have a beer with and just like really, just talk about life and what's going on. So I love the question and the funny sentiment there.
Yeah, totally. And then I think that's on the Charles front. I've already talked about the fact that he's had beefs before with people who were mostly just not as educated as him. And he's very morally driven and principally driven, which I think now in history more than ever is really, really important. And people are seeing the need for that. I think, and I've had a little bit of this in my own life at a far smaller scale, where when you're the person who has morals and principles that you are not willing to budge on, like most people who just disagree with you instantly just call you an asshole. And so he had a lot of that that I think now people are kind of seeing that he knew he was right all along, but they're finally starting to see that the merit of his point, which is bringing people back to him. And I think he's having good conversations, and I'm really grateful that he's being big enough to like turn the other, like to move forward and not like really harp on it. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, no, I'm just continuing to look through Sean Ryan's episodes and seeing like what can we compare to
Normal. Yeah.
Charles. And like, well, first off, yeah, normally definitely not just a full on million, but even he did a show 2 months ago as well with Gavin Newsom, and it's got 1.2 million. So it's just
Gavin,
like the level of
wow.
influence, that Charles has already before we get all of the normies, you know what I'm saying,
Yes.
that are really locked in and trying to figure out what's going on with crypto. I think that
Totally.
that's
A big
definitely
deal.
telling.
No, definitely. And then PLVJ had a good one here. So what other projects has Charles been involved in before Cardano? Well, he was one of the founding members of Ethereum. We talked on that earlier. You may have missed that, but that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I wonder what he was doing before that. Like, honestly, what was
Yeah,
Charles Hoskinson doing before that?
well, hopefully we get him on here and we can ask that question.
Yeah.
But that's my Cardano run through, man. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Nah, dude, I think that was a lot of fun, and looking forward to continuing this series here.
Yeah, totally, man. So on Thursday, we will be talking about Tether and stablecoins. That's a big topic from economics all over the world. Like there's a lot of things that are interwoven into the emergence of stablecoins that the average person doesn't understand. So this will be a fun episode that we'll go down into because there's a lot of implications for a lot of people involved.
Yeah, and there's a lot of controversy around Tether that's been around
Yes.
since, the early days. So that'll be fun to get into too.
Yeah, I'm excited for you to bring that forward so we can educate people on that. So that'll be Thursday, 12 p.m. EST. Set your alarms. And for anyone who's still here live, if you have any questions for us before we wrap up the stream, please let me know and Keith know, and we'll answer them here. That's the benefit you get from showing up live, is that you get to interact with us and the community. And there's some pretty awesome people that pop in here. So do not be shy. If you have a question, let us know.
Yeah, you guys have no idea how cool it is to have you here live. Like,
It's the
it's
best.
really awesome. So
So
thank you.
yeah, it's so much fun. We get a lot from it, and we hope that we can give you even more when we can answer specific questions. And you're good on in your language and your keyboard. RD, thank you, great chat. Thank you for showing up live. We really appreciate all of you that do that. And anything else to add, Keith?
Nah, man.
All right. Well, then let's wrap it here. We'll see y'all on Thursday at 12 p.m. and I'll see you then.
That's